All right. So let's cover Gen 3 night vision.
Okay.
So Gen 3 night vision is interesting because most of our stuff is a mix of vehicle because we have so much ground we can cover, and we don't know where things are at any particular point in time.
Yeah.
But for Gen 3 night vision, when we hunted last night, we were stationary.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us about that, about what you thought about it?
Yeah, so it was nice. I think with Gen 3, it's, obviously it's a lot like scuba diving. If you've ever done that, it feels superhuman. It feels like, this isn't something I should be able to do just seen in the pitch black of night. And it's incredible for certain things, and it's very limiting in others. So like last night, for example, we found out that, especially on the sort of terrain that we're dealing with, these aren't just big, weak fields. And there's, for the Texas, area of Texas that we're at, even the small bit of elevation, when you're just walking around, that is tough to do. Mm-hmm. So for us, it's ultimately been, kind of find that spot, kind of stay in that spot, and work that as best you can, learn that night, maybe use some new tactics the next night if you learn something from that. But movement is a difficult thing to do under night vision with the sort of terrain that we're at least working with.
Much harder than white light.
Right. And so on the other side, the sort of the plus from that is that there are, it makes sense, I just didn't think much about it, but if you have an IR illuminator, eyes still come up, so eyes still behave similarly as they would with white light. If you're spotlighting, that's typically your indicator of, hey, we should check this out. Should we do species identification? Do we need to get out of the truck? Anything like that. So having IR that still picks up eyes, that's pretty great. And at certain distances, rabbit eyes and raccoon eyes and pig eyes can all look the same. Yeah. Luckily, cow eyes, very distinct.
Very distinct.
Not trying to shoot any cows.
Yeah.
And so I think that it gives you a lot of advantages in certain ways. It definitely has its limitations too. It's different from that thermal. I'm not able to see heat signatures 200 yards out, and I'm certainly on Gen 3 night vision. I'm barely able to pick up anything 200 yards out. I can see bushes, I can see things like that.
Or I can see something that's already running, but I can't see something that's slowly walking.
Right. And so picking up those subtle movements, and especially because night vision doesn't do you any good for natural camouflage still.
Yep.
If they're behind the bush, even if there's spacing in that bush where a thermal would pick it up, I'm not seeing them.
Yeah. So I would say my biggest takeaway from using it was that we kind of needed to be stationary, but I thought that driving around was not super effective for being able to pick stuff up.
Yeah.
But also, all the different forms of illumination, that was super cool. So there's an illuminator on the PVS-14. I found that was not helpful for getting light out to where animals were.
Yep.
But we used the Modlite IR head, and that was crazy powerful.
Insane.
Yeah, and then we had two TLR VIRs, and we used them very differently.
Yeah, so those were Series 2 VIRs.
Yep. Yeah. And so one of them we mounted on a rifle, suppressed, because we always run suppressed, with a laser, and was designed to be an illuminator and a laser for suppressed shooting. The other one was helmet mounted, and it was just like kind of wearing a headlamp, but for invisible light.
And I'd imagine that for that, just moving around, which again, we weren't trying to do much, just having something up there does make it a fair bit easier.
Yep.
And I will say that kind of on the whole, the biggest advantage of the Gen 3 night vision for me was with thermal, I'm not able to detach myself from a reticle. If I have a reticle on the gun, I'm very much tied to that if I'm going to make a confident shot. Whereas on a night vision setup, if I've zeroed an IR laser and an illuminator, I can actually detach from that and just be using my whatever individual single tube or double tube setup, whatever it's going to be, to engage multiple targets with, I'd say, a fair bit of an easier transition between the two than I would do on a thermal. That might just be for me, but that's a big plus.
Yep. So all in all, it was a lot of fun. To wrap it up for equipment-wise, we thought that an IR laser was really effective for shooting.
Yeah. And that TLR VR is it's just such a great budget option for sure.
Yeah. And then we thought that helmet-mounted illuminator that was not attached to the PVS-14 was pretty valuable.
Yeah.
And then that, just like in our white light video, which may be attached to this one or it might be another video, might be part one. I'm going to call it part one. That having a handheld light was also super helpful.
Yeah.
The last thing is, there's helmet setups. Chris and I are not night vision helmet experts. There are lots of people who are. But for a quick rundown, Chris, you just want to name what your helmet setup is?
Yeah. So I have a Hardhead Veterans ballistic helmet. Picked it up on eBay, and it's got. I have mine with a white light on it currently. Counterweights on the back, obviously, so you're not just getting extra fatigue that you don't need, and
IR patch and a strobe.
IR patch and a strobe, and that's where I was going to get to go next. Is that all of this stuff that we're talking about, like safety has still got to be absolute top of the list, and so
looking cool, safety, but they're very close.
yeah, exactly. And so if you're talking about maybe having different avenues of shooting, or saying 90-degree angles of fire, anything like that, then being able to identify where somebody is, if they're moving, anything like that. Like when you stepped off last night we're around a feedlot. He moved around to the other side of the feedlot. At all times, I knew where he was. I just looked for flashing light right on top. We used the Unity Tactical disposable. I think you get something like 200 hours. It does constant blinking and high and low constant, then it blinks.
Yeah. No, big fan of that Unity Tactical. Again, as a budget option for a strobe.
Yeah, $20. Yeah.
All right then. So my helmet setup. I am running an OpsCore bump helmet. I've got OpsCore counterweight on it, and then I have a nerd for attaching a PVS-14 made by Kinetic Consulting, and then I have the strobe, and I don't know. That's pretty lightweight. I have the Echo Arms. It's like a Velcro M-LOK slot that has a Picatinny adapter on it, and so I ran the TLR VIR on my helmet, so I had that illuminator. So that was super helpful.
And just for a quick detach, even it's super slick.
And it could also do visible, so that when we were trying to go find that raccoon after it was shot, we were able to do white light as well, and without having to pull out the headlamp from the bag.
Yeah.
All right, so I think that covers Gen 3 night vision. Come back for part 3.